Hello, Migs. You're up next.
Hey Bart, thanks for taking my call. I appreciate it.
Yep, no problem.
Okay, so this hand is out of Resorts World in the Catskills.
Catskills Resorts World, which is, somewhat of a new club that's, what is it, a couple hours away from New York. It's probably the closest room to New York City, right?
Yeah, it is.
Mm-hmm.
Tradition players from the city. It's a good like 2 hours depending on what part of the city they come from.
Okay. And what do they get? What do they get for games up there, by the way, Migs?
I play during the day traditionally, and it's 1-3. There'll be like one or two tables, and there'll be a wait list for 2-5, but it's usually like one of the tables has to break to get that 2-5 going.
So 2-5 is the biggest game that they'll pretty much get, at least during the day, ever.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I know they have a PLO. I'm not really into PLO, but I think that's mostly on the weekend.
And what's the cap in the 1-3 game?
It's 400.
Ugh. I'm saying, I mean, if that's all that you can play, it's all that you can play, right? You know what I mean? Like if it's all, I mean, I went on a whole thing for people that subscribe to Crush Live Poker on my flagship podcast this week. I did something a little bit different in the first segment. I talked about, my parents are living with my wife and I for a few months because they sold their house. Actually, they closed on it this week. It's sold. They had the money and now they're buying a new house, but they're not able to move into the new house until the end of June. They're closing in June. So I helped them with the money portion of this where we got the money through a wire. And then I looked at what were the best options for making money on that money, which I came up with, which was the federal money market account on Vanguard, pay 5.27%. They're going to make like $7,500. No, not 7,500. They make about $4,500 in 6 weeks on about $750,000 just sitting there because of the interest. And I was like, oh, this is great. But you're in an environment where we've never lived in this environment before. It's always used to be 0% interest rates, right? So I've got a pretty good financial head on my shoulders, and people aren't all that financially literate, especially gamblers. So it's important to learn this stuff, and it's important to live within your means and not overspend, with one big exception, I would say. Because I talk to all new subscribers that come onto the site that join our Discord because they have to message me to get the subscriber tag. And there was one guy that was like, well, because I always tell people, you got to move up. You got to move up out of these stakes. Because the rake's going to kill you alive. It's going to eat you alive. And he's like, well, I want to, I'm of the philosophy of 50%, 50, 30, 20, which I had actually never heard of. 50% for, life expenses, 30% recreation, 20% savings, which in any other sort of approach or any other facet is great. That's a great thing to, live by, right? Like have a personal budget in financing, with the exception of low stakes poker. And what I mean by that is that if you want to be sort of a semi-pro or a kind of I call it a semi-pro. If you want to be a recreational player or a serious recreational player or a part-time player that actually makes decent money in the game, and I define decent money as probably over $1,000 a month. So, take that for its worth. If you can put 40 hours in, a month, make over $25 at a bare minimum per hour. If that is the goal, which is usually what the goal is for a lot of people that, sign up for a training site or are watching these videos, you have to understand, you have to come to the realization that you need to get out of a rake trap, which is the micro stakes, as quickly as possible. Now, there are people in the comments that will come on and say, I make $22 an hour at 1-2 over like the last 800 hours. Fine. Okay, fine. But if you can make that type of money at that level, then you should definitely probably make at least 75% of what 2x of that would be at the next level up. Because there are if you break even in these games, you're probably a decent player at these levels with the setup of rake at the micro stake. So one of the first things I try to tell people is, if you want to make money in poker, okay, if you're new to live poker, there's nothing wrong with playing at the lowest level. Get yourself acclimated to the chips, the shenanigans of live poker, stuff like that. But you got to get out of the smallest level, because the rake or the drop is such a higher percentage of your win rate, because the rake and the drop is the same across all levels. Now, in your case, Migs, this is all you got, which is fine. But there's a lot of times I think people get lazy about that and they just sort of fall into their comfort zone. And it's just kind of funny because I say, you shouldn't even consider a bankroll. You should be aggressive at bankroll. If you have money from another job and you're trying to play as a seriously recreational player and you can replenish your bankroll, there should be no steadfast rules about bankroll. If you're not doing it like as a professional, like for your own livelihood, you need to get out of these levels as quickly as possible. And it's actually counterintuitive and it's actually bad. And it's a hinder to try to go in and play poker by something. Oh, I need to make X amount of buy-ins before I need to move up to the next level. No, you need to move up to the next level now if you're playing at the micros, because the micros are just the rake's going to eat you alive, and you develop a lot of bad habits and you don't learn anything. So that's my diatribe. Now, again, that probably doesn't even apply to you, but I'm just saying because that's what I talked about this week on the flagship podcast. Okay, so Catskills Resort 1-3-400. Okay.
Yeah, that's all sound advice. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let me jump into it.
Sure.
So it's a 1-3-400 cap. So the tables are 8-handed at resorts, which is pretty good. So I am in the hijack with 10-9 of hearts.
Okay.
Let me give you a little background on the villain, who I'm going to be up against. So he sat down. I probably saw him play a good hour. The first hand, he got stacked early and he was tilting, playing aggressive. He showed down like second or third pair at showdown, after that. So he was playing pretty wild. And then the deck started hitting him and he quickly got over, he doubled up. I think he doubled up twice. And then he was on fire. So up until this point where, I'm in the hand with him.
Okay.
So I am in the hijack 9-10 of hearts, 1,000 effective.
1,000 effective. Okay.
Yeah, he has me covered. I grinded up to 1,000 before he sat down. It's folded around to me. So he's in the big blind.
Okay.
So I'm in the hijack. He's in the big blind. Folds around to me. I bet 10.
So you open for a raise to 10.
Yeah, I'd say typically it's between 6 and 15 in this card room.
Yeah, that's a little bit small, and you're pretty deep too. I mean, just straight 1-3. A lot of times you'll see $15 opens. The reason why I say it's a little bit kind of on the smaller side, and you can go back and forth with this, like you can keep like a balanced open size where you make it the same, with every single hand. Usually, though, a lot of the money at these games are like through value and just sort of having the best hand. It's a lot of showdown types of situations. Funny because, you get 10-9 of hearts. It's not like a great hand, but it's definitely an open. But I think that some value is lost by raising too small in these games because I want to always try to find the amount that I can raise to where I'm still getting the dominated hands to call. Like whether that's 15, whether that's 20, if I can get King Jack off the call for 15 at the same rate that it's calling for 10, then I'm raising to 15 a lot, and I might tighten up my opening and just raise like very good hands, but that's kind of the whole point. Now, with that being said, if you're up against shorter stacks, now you said this, you're 1K effective in this hand, but if there's a lot of shorter stacks, I can see raising a little bit smaller so that you have some stack depth, going post flop. Okay, so you open at 10.
Yeah, we're me and the villain are the stack. We have the highest stacks on the table, and then it's a mix, below that. So there are some short stacks on the table.
Mm-hmm.
So I bet 10 and folds around, and then villain 3 bets to 25
in the big blind.
In the big blind, yeah, it folds around to him.
Wow, that's really strange. I mean, strange in the sense it's really small.
Yeah, which was kind of weird. It was very atypical of the play he had kind of presented up until this point. So that got me thinking a little bit. But he bets 25, and I call.
Did you ever did you ever consider throwing in the 4 bet there? I'm not saying that would be a play. I'm just saying, did it ever cross your mind?
Yeah, on the drive home, I kind of thought about the hand, and I'm like, that may have been a better option, and I'm assuming that's something you would consider.
It's just, I mean, it's bizarre. I mean, I don't even know the last time I've seen it. Like, your head's up and the guy goes 2.5x like as a 3 bet, and you're in position, right? I mean, his sizing should be way bigger than this. I just wonder what this is, and then you wonder, like, is he 3 bet folding some hands? Like, why is this? It's definitely bizarre. So, all right, so the pot's $50. Okay.
Yeah. So flop comes out 8 of diamonds, 7 of diamonds, 2 of clubs.
All right, so you flop an open-ended straight draw with 2 overcards.
Yeah, yeah, I'm happy about that flop.
Okay.
pretty good about that.
Yeah.
So villain checks, and I lead out with 35.
So villain checks. So he makes this really weird clickety back like 3-bet from 10 to 25 and then checks this board. Very interesting here. Yeah, I mean, of course I'm going to bet, and just even looking ahead, planning ahead, I still think that like, even if he has like some like ace, king, ace, queen, it's not like he's going to check fold. I mean, this is not like 2005, like people used to play like this way. So you're probably going to have to at least bet twice and then decide if he calls turn, whether you want to bluff the river. One of the things that you want to keep in mind, not only did you flop, an open-ended straight draw in this case, but like the fact that the villain has checked here after being the preflop 3-better almost always will indicate that he does not have a flush draw. So you not only have an open-ended straight draw, but I would consider this like a flush draw too. Like I would just barrel through diamonds because this guy does not have diamonds for the most part when just based upon this action.
Agreed.
So you bet 35.
Yep, I bet 35.
Okay.
And villain calls.
So big blind calls. Again, not unexpected. The only thing I will say here, as I just went into that whole thing with diamonds, is that sometimes you'll find, like say for example, the turn here is like, I don't know, the 3 of diamonds, right? Something like that. He checks, you bet again, and then he calls, and I just said, well, he doesn't have flush draw, but you have to understand that usually that will mean that he has a high diamond in his hand because, again, not all, we're not looking at this always, but usually I would say that this action, maybe like 90% of the time at this level is going to, if not more, is going to mean when he checks that he doesn't have an overpair and he doesn't have diamond. So if a diamond comes on the turn, he checks, you bet, and he calls. Now I'm thinking he's going to actually have an unpaired high diamond in his hand, and you would have to bluff through the river, right? Because on a brick, right? Because that's what he gets to with on the turn, just because of the check on the flop and the propensity for people to not check, like I said, overpairs and flush draws. Okay, so 35 in a call, so it's 120. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yep, that makes sense. So we go to the turn. Turn is a 6 of clubs.
Wow, nice. Yeah, nice turn.
That's gin.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So villain checks again, and now I lead out for 100.
So hero bets 100. Just a little, I don't mean to be, just as a little side minx here.
Sure.
Usually when someone says lead, they usually mean they're first. So it's a little strange for you to describe check and then you're leading. It's okay. You're just betting.
Yeah.
Now, it's interesting though with your sizing, because if you go back, so what do you think I'm going to say about your sizing here? You're betting almost the size of the pot. What do you think I'm going to say?
It's too big?
Well, you need to do things to build the pot up with nut hands. Mm-hmm. So it's very, very rare for me to say, oh, you're trying to, go too large with value or when I always talk about fast playing certain things. But if you do sort of believe, if you agree with me for the most part that this is almost never an overpair, the check call on the flop, it's just kind of hard for this guy to really have anything. Now, I'm not saying check through the turn, but I probably would have gone smaller, to be honest with you. Because, and also too, like any types of like high cards aren't going to have straight draws. Like ace queen, ace king, something like that. I mean, you have the 9 in your hand. So there's less likely that he's going to have any type of straight draw. So I think I probably would have gone smaller here just because, again, it's just one of these things where the way that this hand starts out, usually if I was in your spot, I would think by the end I'm going to win this hand by bluffing at it because the guy doesn't have anything. But then when you actually make the nuts, now you're like, well, how do I account for the fact that I actually don't think this guy's all that strong?
That makes sense. So maybe more like half pot or
yeah, maybe 40 or 50 or something like that. Yeah. All right. So you bet 100. Okay.
Yeah. Bet 100. Villain calls.
All right. Call. So that's very interesting. Okay. Well, now that he's called, he has to have something, unless he's really like bluff catching you with like, if he thinks that, again, the really small 3-bet sizing is kind of bizarre too. Unless he's still continuing to call with like ace king or something, thinking that like you have nothing. I'm trying to think, what else could he have here? Because again, most overpairs are going to bet off So a hand like 9s and 10s, again, you block 9s and you block 10s.
Mm-hmm.
You know, those would definitely call across turn, but would they check the flop? Ace 10, again, you block, picks up a straight draw. Ace 9, that's what I was saying. It's interesting because of what you hold in your hand. Because some of those ace high hands that have the straight draws. Ace 5, it's hard for me to try to figure out what this guy has when most people bet off with overpairs.
Agreed. Yeah.
Yeah. And they bet with diamond draws, right?
Right. But up until this point, I'm feeling pretty good. Obviously, you know, I have the nuts here. So,
by the way, there is a backdoor club draw though that has come in. So maybe if he check called with some sort of ace high hand that picked up clubs now, there's that.
Yep.
Maybe. Okay, so 320 here to the river.
Okay, now river comes and it is the deuce of hearts.
Okay.
So both flushes miss, but the board has paired.
Mm-hmm.
So now his turn to lead out. He's just taking his time now, really like a minute. He's just thinking, and he's just trying to like convey this feeling of uncertainty. I could clearly see that. I mean, I'm just like, you know, kind of scratching my head, like, you know, what is he trying to convey here? He sighs, and then he bets 400.
Wow.
He just leads right out for 400.
There you go. Big blind leads for 400. There's the proper. He's first to act, right? Wow, that is that is really something because, and there were some people that were in the live chat. Now, we didn't talk about him possibly slow playing a hand, which would have been like a set. You would think a set of like 8s or 7s or something like that would have raised off on the turn by the turn.
Right.
The problem that I have here, I'm not consider folding. This is between whether I raise or call. There's no way I'm not making that hero fold like from before with ace king from a couple calls ago on the live stream.
Yeah.
When the guy checked back the turn. So it's either going to be a call or a raise for me. And he has he's got like only 400 left behind. I mean, if you were to put them all in, it's like a min raise, right? Like you're basically shoving in for 800. So it's kind of like the reverse pot odds thing, which is a crush live poker reference, which means that like the smaller amount of money that someone has, the thinner you can actually go for value all in because they're going to be getting a better price, right? So when he bets 400 into 320, if you had like 800 left, if you shove, the pot would be like 1,500. It would be 400 for him to call, right? He's going to be getting 4-1. So there's a little bit of reverse pot odds. However, though, this is such an extreme line of like, I just don't see him having aces here, which is the one, you know, the hand that you would want to get like value from, right? Aces. Unless he had somehow like ace deuce suited. Could he have ace deuce suited? Obviously, you beat ace deuce, right?
Yeah.
So that's and again, he'd have to call the turn. I mean, is he calling like ace deuce of diamonds? I mean, ace deuce of diamonds, though, if you 3-bet with ace deuce of diamonds and then you flop the nut flush draw on a pair, how does he check calling? It's something like ace deuce of spades or something like that. I don't think that's likely. So as I go back to what I said about like how unlikely it is that he has an overpair given this line, that maybe once in a great while he has a set somehow that he was playing slow. So I think this is a situation where he's probably going to end up with nothing at all somehow, some sort of weird thing, or he actually has a boat more often than you shoving and getting called by worse, even though it's only a min raise.
So my thought process, you know, at this point now is we hadn't really played a hand together. I could tell he knows what he's doing, you know, regardless of the short time I played with him. And this is the first, he's never really seen me get out of line during that time we played, you know, so I was thinking maybe he had ace king of diamonds and he bricked out and now he's just, you know.
Well, I mean, you're thinking that he has a bluff that he's missed. I mean,
yeah,
he might have some, who knows, because it's this level. Again, I don't think it would be ace king of diamonds though, because I do feel strongly. Yeah, I feel strongly that, you know, over pairs and front door flush draws will be bet out on the flop a lot. So maybe it's some sort of backdoor clubs, you know, that miss. But as people are saying, it is kind of a polar spot where he's representing a hand pretty much that has you beat, or he's probably going to have nothing at all. There just isn't enough of the in-between, like a hand like kings, aces, or like ace deuce to jam. when it starts to get this extreme. Some people saying fold, fold. I'm still not folding. What did you do? What did you end up doing?
So I tanked. I was watching him at this point just to try to, get a read on him. And I could just, he looked very comfortable. He just, I couldn't get anything out of him. And I'm thinking to myself, I just have a feeling that I'm beat here. I know it against anyone else at the table, it would be a snap call, but I just had a bad feeling. So
yeah, but are you beat? Yeah, but okay, you could say you're beat, but I mean, you're getting pot odds, though, almost 2-1. I know he overbet. I mean, this is some other thing about like poker. Like, are you beat here more than 2 out of 3 times?
Yeah, so I'm thinking I'm beat. He has, the combos of eights full or sevens full, or maybe maybe he backs into sixes full or something like that. That's what ultimately I started thinking about, and I know it's a very probably nitty rationalization.
By the way, 6-6 is actually a hand that we didn't discuss that might actually even make more sense than a flop set on the flop. He sort of check calls and then hits, but for some reason doesn't raise because it's like bottom set and a straight has come on the turn. Right. So that makes some sense.
Yeah, I don't see him holding any 2. So it's really, I just felt boat here. And so I ended up, after tanking, I ended up folding, but I tabled my hand. I folded. I did. And now here's the interesting part. I tabled my hand. I showed him because I know that he's a nice enough guy that he would show me his hand, or at least that's what I was hoping.
Okay.
And everyone at the table saw my hand. They're like, "Oh my gosh, wow!" And he kind of giggled and he flipped over. He flipped over pocket 8. He had the boat. Yeah, he had 8s full.
That's a hell of a fold. That's a hell of a fold.
I know. Yeah, it was pretty crazy, but
that's the type of thing where I was talking about how like 1-3 can be a rake trap, and then you get into you're sitting in a game, with somebody like Miggs, who's folding a straight and then showing it, and he's correct against top set. Can you imagine, like, how sometimes you get into these grindy like games, like during these daytime games with all these OMCs, and then you sit down, you don't know anybody, and then you sit down, this fucking guy like folds 9-10 here at the end, and the other guy's got pocket 8s. You're like, get me out of this game. What am I doing?
Definitely one of the nittiest folds I've ever made, but it did work out for me in this case.
Yeah, I don't know if I can make that fold though, man. I don't know if I can make that fold. Interesting. All right, thanks for the call. Appreciate it.